Hello, everyone. We are still admitting some folks. We will get started in just a moment.
Great, we're doing good. It's looking like we have more than 25 people on so far, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. It's great. Is everyone coming off camera? Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Okay, I'll go ahead and kick us off. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Digital Equity Outreach webinar, first one, or the one for the spring in our Office of Digital Equity and Literacy. Want to say hello to everyone and thank you so much for joining us for this kickoff to learn more about how we're doing our outreach. I'm Annette Taylor, and I am the Director of the Office of Digital Equity and Literacy within our Division of Broadband and Digital Equity, which is a part of North Carolina's Department of Information Technology. And so it's great to see so many folks joining us today. I want to appreciate you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us, to learn more about what we're doing in this office and how we intend to capture your feedback as part of our planning. Next slide. And I want to give a shout out to all of the colleagues on here that we will not have a chance to go through and do all of our staff introductions, but definitely want to recognize our leadership. You'll hear from Maggie Woods, and our colleague Crystal Dickerson is on, our comms director. I'm not sure who else from our office, but I do want to recognize and acknowledge our leadership, Deputy Secretary Nate Denny, who many of you know, and of course our CIO of the state, Secretary James Weaver. So today we're going to provide, I'm going to provide this overview sharing what the flow of our day will be like, our short hour. I think we're here for an hour, so I need to be swift with this introduction, but we want to talk to you about our upcoming activities that we are doing in our office. We'll share about the Digital Equity Survey. We certainly need your feedback on, and those in your network. And you'll learn more about the Community Outreach Toolkit, which is in development. And I think your feedback will really support the completion of that. You'll also hear from our partners and what the Asset Inventory Survey is all about. So we're really excited to talk to you about those things. And then we'll go into a live Q&A. So you'll have an opportunity to ask questions and to understand more from us and about ways that the work we're doing can inform your communities and you can inform our digital equity planning. Next slide. So as many know, and folks are still coming in, so thanks everybody for bearing with us. Folks are still coming in, and so welcome to all of the folks who are joining us. I think many of you are aware that our goal in this office, which I mentioned earlier, is a part of our Broadband and Digital Equity Division, part of the state's Department of Information Technology. And we're closing the digital divide. We know that more than 1 million people are on the wrong side of the digital divide. And so in our office, we're really focusing on increasing access to high-speed internet. We're really trying to create awareness of, affordable connectivity and get people connected to affordable internet. And we're trying to help people build the skills that they need to be able to take advantage of this digital economy. And so the governor made it a priority from the beginning of his administration. And we are very fortunate to have the resources and got a little back. And the support that we need to implement programs. We're also working to build capacity across the state to reach these goals. And so some folks on here may even already be beneficiaries of those investments. Our goal to achieve the digital divide by 2025 really means that we're raising the percentage of North Carolina households with access to high-speed internet to 98%. We know that there's a number that is not accurate that is currently part of research, but we really want to get it to the true 98% of households with access to high-speed internet by 2025. We are hoping to raise the percentage of households with high-speed internet subscriptions from 73% to 80%. And then we're also making sure that 100% of our households with school-aged children have broadband subscriptions by 2025. And so our final means of achieving the digital divide is about adoption. And we want to make sure that all racial subgroups have adopted the internet at 80%. Up from various different rates. It's something many of you have seen and we can share later, but we want to grow the percentage of our various minority populations in closing the digital divide. We know that access to the internet is important and adopting it is important, and we want to make that possible. So that's our role in this office, as well as this digital planning, equity planning that you'll learn more about today and how we're going about our outreach. So with that, I'm going to pause and shift it over to my colleague, Maggie Woods, who will tell you more about the work that we're doing to develop our plan. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone for being here.
Thanks, Annette, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. So I'm Maggie Woods. I'm a digital equity manager in the Office of Digital Equity and Literacy. I've engaged with many of you. I see a lot of familiar faces and names on the call, and really very much look forward to engaging with all of you as we do this important work. We did get a question in the chat about whether this will be recorded. Yes, this is currently being recorded, and so the recording and the slides will be up on our website likely this week. If you weren't able to attend, or if you want to send this to other colleagues, it'll be very easy to do so. And since we don't have time for everyone to introduce themselves separately, and we have such a great group of people, I'd encourage you just to introduce yourself in the chat, tell us who you are and where you're joining us from, just so that we can continue to create community around this work. So as Annette mentioned, we are developing some pretty significant outreach and engagement strategies as a part of our digital equity and broadband planning efforts. Today, we're really going to be focused on two strategies. So our digital equity survey and our asset inventory survey, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a moment. And we also have our partners here who are leading those efforts here to talk to you in more detail about those. But I just wanted to provide kind of an overview of the kinds of activities we're doing over the course of the next 6 months, because we want to engage with you on all of these activities, and we encourage feedback and any of your help and support with all of these. So we kicked off our digital equity and our broadband planning efforts in March. We are working with community-based organizations to host small listening sessions as we speak. And then we are also currently on a tour of the state with 8 regional sessions. We did 3 regional sessions last week, and we have another 5 coming up. And so I'll make sure that I drop that information in the chat at the earliest convenience. And if you're unmuted, would you please mute yourself just so that we don't get any feedback? I'm getting a little bit of feedback. But we'd love for you to join us for these upcoming regional sessions, because we want to hear from you. We want to hear, what are the needs when it comes to broadband access, affordability, digital skills, access to devices in your communities. And we also want to hear from you what are solutions to meeting some of those needs. We are going to culminate these regional convenings with a summit May 23rd, and we will follow up with information about that. And then we will have some webinar updates as well throughout the course of the next several months, so that you can stay in touch with our office about what we're learning through our planning efforts. So let's move to the next slide. And I just wanted to note that while these plans that we're developing and all this outreach that we're doing is focused on all of North Carolina, we are specifically focused on 10 priority populations, or as the federal government calls them, covered populations. And so these are populations that the federal government has deemed to be the most digitally excluded populations nationally and in North Carolina. So you'll see that a lot of our work will have special intention of engaging these groups. So if we move to the next slide, like I mentioned, we wanted to focus intently on two aspects of our outreach efforts today, and really get your feedback on how best we can get the word out on these. So you're going to hear us talk for about 20 minutes, but really most of this is meant to hear from you. How would you like to engage with us? How can we best support you as we work to do some of this outreach and just kind of create that dialogue? So the two outreach efforts we really want to focus on today are the Digital Equity Survey and the Asset Inventory Survey. And we'll have our partners talk a little bit more in depth on both of these, but I wanted to spend a moment and just distinguish between these two surveys so that we know what we're talking about, what the differences are. So for the Digital Equity Survey, this is really a survey that is meant to be distributed to the individuals. It's supposed to complement our broadband survey, which we've had deployed for several years. And it's really meant to identify what are people's needs, you know, who has internet? Do they feel like they can afford it? How much are they paying per month? Do people have access to the laptops and the other kinds of devices, digital devices that they need in their households? Do they have the digital skills that are appropriate in order to excel in their daily life? So we're really looking at this survey to identify needs and barriers to digital equity. Whereas the Asset Inventory Survey is really meant to be distributed to organizations. And so this is meant to identify current digital equity programs and services. So where can you go to if you want access to digital skills classes? Where can you go if you want to get a free computer or a low-cost computer? Is there a business in your community that offers free Wi-Fi that people can go to access? And so thinking about what already exists in the state, what are the assets or what are the resources? And so these are two surveys that we're going to be deploying. We're going to spend the majority of today talking about our Digital Equity Survey because it is live, it is available. We can use your help today in getting the word out about that. And then for the Asset Inventory Survey, that's coming up. So we just want to kind of give you a teaser, and we'll have more information about that we can share with you soon, but at a little bit of a later date. So I'm going to pass this to Erin Huggins at the NC State Friday Institute for Educational Innovation. And the Friday Institute is helping us deploy that Digital Equity Survey. And so she's going to talk a little bit more about that. I see we're already getting questions in the chat. That's fabulous. I will make note and we'll make sure to answer that question as well. So Lori, thanks so much for that. But I'm going to pass this to Erin to talk a little bit more about the Digital Equity Survey.
Thanks so much, Maggie. Thank you all for having me here today. So yeah, Maggie said our Digital Equity Survey is live today. There's a QR code here. We also have a short link. And one of the things I wanted to point out is that we are trying to collect information from people across the state. And we know when we're talking about the digital divide and we only have something that is available online, we're not capturing information from the folks that we really need to hear from. So this survey is also going to be available via print, as well as we're going to have a call-in number that folks can call in to answer. What that means for all of you organizations, if you do have needs in your community where you think we need to have printed surveys, I need to hear from you. I can mail like individual copies to people. I can send you packets, but we really want to make sure that we are getting the word out and getting the folks in our communities to fill this survey out. It is, as Maggie said, geared towards all of our community members. And we have a particular focus on those 8 covered populations, but also we want to hear from just the general public in North Carolina. Maggie already talked a little bit about some of the components of this survey. We're going to focus, we have questions related to location, so where folks are living, so we can map this out across the state. We're going to have questions about accessibility, affordability, the inclusivity of some public resources that are available. We're also going to ask folks about their digital skills, and consumer devices and technical support. In addition to those questions, we're also trying to collect some demographic information. So again, we can note, where our covered populations are and what their specific needs are. This will also be available in our top 6 languages. So that's for individuals that speak English less than very well. So we have it in Spanish, Mandarin, Vietnamese, Arabic, French, and Korean. And right now the survey is only available in English. We have our amazing Qualtrics team working to translate into all of these languages as we speak. So those will be available as they come in. But I would imagine within the next week, we should have all of those languages ready to go. In the survey tool itself, if you take the online survey, there'll just be a little drop-down bar, whether you're taking it from your phone or from a laptop or from a tablet, where you can choose whatever language you prefer, and you can actually switch back and forth between like English and your preferred language if that's something that people would like to do. Let's see. I think the main thing to point out for this is that we really, really do need your help distributing this survey to as many people as possible. Maggie's going to talk a little bit about this great toolkit that they've been working on. And so, if we have flyers that can go up, things like that. For libraries, if you have like a tablet in the library that you can set up to have the link just available, that would be super helpful. Let's see. I think that was a lot of the kind of nitty-gritty. I think the survey itself is going to take about 10 minutes to complete. It does ask quite a few questions, but they're really, really important questions. And it's really important to let people know that there won't be any personally identifiable information that will be shared about them. And it is optional. So if somebody decides to start the survey, they are welcome to stop at any point in time. And I think that was about it. Maggie, did I leave anything out?
No, I don't think so. And we've gotten some great questions, which actually brings us to the next slide to talk about the toolkit itself. And I'll try to answer the questions that are being put in the chat as I talk about the toolkit as well. So we are putting together, and it's almost finalized, a toolkit to help all of you be able to distribute this survey. So this toolkit is going to include talking points about kind of everything that Erin mentioned, the length of the survey, that it's completely optional, what kinds of things that it will ask. We'll have, a social media post that you can copy and paste, or you can edit as you want. We'll have newsletter or website text if you want to put this in a newsletter, as well as graphics and links to the survey and to the QR code. We'll also have like paper copies of them as they are translated just in the back of the toolkit. But as Erin mentioned, if you want paper surveys that have a self-addressed envelopes, please request via email. And so this email will also be available in the toolkit. We will also have flyers and other kinds of printed materials that you can use, such as bookmarks for public libraries. Lori asked, will the survey be translated or interpreted? I understand that there is a difference. So the way it works is that this survey is done through Qualtrics, and they actually hire interpreters to be able to interpret the survey so that it makes sense in the languages that it's being translated into. And so it's a really good question. It's not just like AI generated translation, but it actually is someone who is a native speaker translating it so that it makes sense. So that's a really great question. Cindy from the Camden Institute asked, will the toolkit and survey be available in PDF or on the website so that they can do the printing? Yes, this is all going to be available on our website in a PDF, so you can download the toolkit, make it very easy for you to be able to copy and paste the social media posts, to download the flyers, or to print yourself as needed. But if you do want kind of pre-addressed envelopes, again, you can reach out to Erin's team. Rhonda says that she would like to have be able to send this out to different branches. So absolutely, if you make that request via that email, we can make sure that that is possible. And I think we've answered, Lori, the question about languages that the survey is in to your question there. So Bernie says, I'm worried that if I distribute the survey, the folks that will fill it out are going to skew the data badly. Those who fill it out will be very savvy. Is this going to be used statistically? Erin, do you want to talk a little bit about our process for ensuring that we're kind of oversampling certain populations and kind of respond to Bernie's question there?
Hi, so that is a good point. We would really like to get this in the hands of as many people as possible. One of the reasons we're collecting so much demographic information is that so we'll know if we are oversampling a specific population, and we will be able to do our analyses based on all of these different types of breakouts. I hope that's helpful.
And let's move on to the next slide. This just gives you a sense of what the toolkit's going to look like. And again, we're finalizing it with the idea of we wanted to vet this by all of you first and see what questions and feedback you had so that we could make it better before we get it on our website. And so you can see we have the sample social media posts. We have newsletter, website content. We have a flyer that can be downloaded. And then we do have these bookmarks that can be printed and put in books. And again, that came from conversations with the state library to ensure that this is sent out to all their branches. So just trying to brainstorm for their needs, what would make the most sense. But their needs might be different than your needs. So that's why we want to make sure that we are addressing the needs that you all have in your communities. So this will be up very shortly after we've had this conversation and we've done some more Q&A with all of you. But I also wanted to make sure that we talk about this upcoming asset inventory. Even though it's not ready yet and we don't have a toolkit for it yet, we want you to know that this will be that this is coming down the line so that you can be prepared for it. And then I'll continue with the Q&A. We're getting some more questions as we speak, which is fabulous. That's exactly what we need. But if we move to the next slide, and I will introduce Dr. Rizi Ogbo, who is with NC Central University, and NC Central is helping us with the asset inventory. So Dr. Ogbo, I will pass it to you to talk a little bit more about what is coming up the line.
Thank you, Maggie. We know that the digital divide landscape has changed significantly. Over the past decade, it's mostly the core barriers to broadband inclusion is mostly been affordability, the high cost of devices, high cost of services, and the lack of digital skills. But today we have a lot of organizations, including those of you that are here in the room doing fantastic work to help address these barriers. But now the challenge has kind of shifted where lack of awareness about these programs is a core barrier. And so working with folks from the Friday Institute and NCDIT, we at NC Central are working to develop an asset inventory to help address this lack of awareness barrier. The goal is to collect information from organizations across communities in North Carolina to understand what digital inclusion resources are available in those communities, and foundationally, how can we raise awareness about those available resources. So we're going to be working with organizations that either provide digital inclusion programs or provide support to organizations that provide digital inclusion programs. And that includes federal, state, and local government organizations, philanthropic organizations, libraries, K-12 schools, higher educational institutions, and so on and so forth. And specifically, we're going to be working with these organizations to collect information about existing digital inclusion programs that addresses different barriers or different categories of digital inequity. And this includes programs that provide broadband access or help with affordability, programs that provide access to devices, including refurbished devices, discounted devices, either devices that the target recipients would own outright, or loaner programs where they can use the devices for a limited period of time. Also programs that help with digital skills, digital upskilling, digital navigation, technical support, and so on. And like Maggie said earlier, also programs that help with internet access or device access. And this could be a location where you have public Wi-Fi and people can go to access the internet in a public space. And would also be interested in collecting information about programs that help to provide digital inclusion funding. And the goal is to design and develop an asset inventory that will help members of the community to identify what programs exist that they are eligible for, what programs provide services, devices, upskilling, and so on and so forth in their community that they're eligible for. But we also want the tool to be beneficial to organizations as well. And so we would also want to collect information from you on what has been the impact of the program that you are running, and what strategies have you found that have been effective that you could also share with other organizations across the state. And so the goal at the end of the day is to really create a sustainable resource, a living, breathing resource that can be updated over time, that really helps the members of the community that we're trying to help and also help the organizations. And so at the end of the day, we really would be leveraging your expertise to know what kind of data would you want to see, what type of, what ways can we engage and ensure that the tool is beneficial to you. One other thing I was going to just say to kind of wrap this up is we're going to be using a snowballing approach. So like Maggie said, we're still developing the asset inventory. We're going to be using the framework from NDIA, but also tailoring it to make sure that it's specific to North Carolina. And we're going to be using a snowballing approach, which means we're going to work with you, identify some other organizations that are working in this space, and would lean on you for recommendations on who else is working in this space, who else can we share the survey to, or who you can share the survey to on our behalf.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agbo. That was great. And as she mentioned, we are working with our kind of internal team to finalize this survey, but we will make sure that once it is available and live, that we will let all of you know, and we may engage in another kind of virtual discussion on ways to help distribute as well. So I think this brings us to our Q&A section. So the rest of the hour, 45 minutes to an hour, is really, available to you. We have until 2 o'clock. I see some questions in the chat, so I'm going to start answering those. But if you have a question, you can either type them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we can unmute you as well. So we'd love to, see your face, hear your voice as well, if you'd prefer to ask that way. So we did get a couple folks saying that this looks good. Greg Clinton asked what the timeline for completing the survey. That's great. We're hoping to get an initial baseline by the end of June, but the survey will be open through the end of August. And Lori asked about the kind of diversity of images. Yes, we're actually planning to have more diverse images. This was just an example that we pulled, but absolutely, it's a really great point. So thanks for raising that. And Todd had asked about, he wished that there were more did you know questions and kind of clarified below of, did you know that you could get a senior discount for groceries? Did you know that you can get free education? So kind of bringing people in. So I think that's interesting as we think about what our messaging is around this. And I think that'll be particularly helpful for that asset inventory because the asset inventory is all about how do we bring in, how do we collect what is already existing? So did you know about, this program that helps you do X? So I think that's fantastic. Thank you so much for that suggestion. David is asking, sorry if I missed this, but how are you determining the lifespan and usability of devices? And talks about how, not all of them are meant for long-term use. So I will say we have some real experts on the call that are focused on device refurbishment. Our survey asks about, do you feel like you have enough appropriate devices in the house? It does ask what happened, if your device broke or you had a problem within the last 6 months, what did you do? So trying to get at understanding technical assistance. It does not ask about kind of longevity of devices, but as we as an office are thinking about this and thinking about how we get devices to people who need them, because we know about 430,000 North Carolina households don't have a home laptop or desktop computer, we're considering that, right? What kinds of devices do we need to get to people and what is considered an equitable device, right? Todd, I see you have a question. You've raised your hand. So I think you can actually just go ahead and unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is a really great one because we're doing an awful lot to get devices out. The library, E2D, just some amazing stuff.
Yeah.
But when it comes, I won't say refurbishment, I'll say repair. So a giant vacuum in the community is there isn't a repair strategy. You've still got to go to Geek Squad or somebody else. And we all know that the i5s will most likely lose their CMOS battery first, that's going to die out and need replacement. But there's many other things that could happen. And there has been no plan for sustainability of equity, only making a spot equity achievement. Oh, look at all the laptops we delivered. And that's going to last for about a year or so. But there is no sustainability in the device and connectivity market, or even any plan of what happens after ACP, and on and on and on. Sustainability is lacking in many, many of the plans, in my opinion.
I agree. It's something that we're considering at the state level as well, because even if you think about all the laptops that were distributed during COVID to K-12 students, right, those are now starting to age out, and we're seeing the Department of Public Instruction wrestling with how do we get, better laptops or new laptops. So the sustainability is key. I'll also mention this is something we're hearing in our regional sessions, and so we keep telling us about it. It is on our radar that anything that we implement that has to do with devices or anything that we're funding has to focus on sustainability and has to focus on building, refurbishing hubs or different kinds of centers around the state so that it's not just crammed in an E2D that are the only, device refurbishers in the state. So Todd, I hear you. Thanks for raising that. And I would love to hear more of your thoughts on the best ways to do that. These are really, really great questions, really great points. And so please feel free to add to those in the chat if this is something that you're working on when it comes to the sustainability of devices. It is a nut that we are working to crack, and we need a lot more people thinking and working with us on it. Susan says, we are interested in seniors living in skilled nursing facilities and attending adult health, daycare, and affordable senior apartments. I'm looking for a skilled nursing facility for my mother where I can find a central list incorporating devices, internet in the senior skilled nursing facilities and their families. Yes, I mean, part of what we've learned and kind of what national best practice says is that incorporating, anything that we're focused on when it comes to the digital divide. So giving people devices, skills, signing them up for the Affordable Connectivity Program, which is a federal subsidy program for internet, is incorporating it into where people are already getting services. And so that definitely connects to, seniors and senior living centers and facilities. So thanks for raising that, Susan. And if we can be helpful in kind of getting the word out to those centers that you're connected with, please let us know.
I do have another question.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Currently in skilled nursing facilities, you don't have access to the internet. I was in a skilled nursing facility for 3 months, and now we're building a skilled nursing village, which will be the first in the U.S. And when these seniors go in there, they only have so much a month that they can spend, and then they still have to pay for their get their hair done and everything like that. They do not have a laptop that they could have with them, and they do not have access to the internet. I could not connect with the internet when I was in a skilled nursing facility. I don't think that the skilled nursing facilities are putting the funds out. They have a central location that they maybe can go into a conference room and use theirs, but for each person that is interested in having their own laptop and the skilled nursing facility, the funds to have internet and provide it to the residents, not only to the employees, that's kind of also a point.
Thank you for raising that. That's not something that we've heard before. So Susan, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So this is that it's not so much that there may not be access to the skilled nursing facilities. It's that the facilities may have Wi-Fi that's kind of available in kind of public areas, but they're not paying for internet for their residents, and residents themselves may not find it within their budget to pay for internet themselves. Is that how you've seen it?
Yes, and they do not have the money for their own phone if they don't have family to provide that phone and pay for it, which I know we may not be talking about telephones, but if they want to email somebody and they want to have a laptop in their room, I could not connect mine at all. So I had no access to the internet.
Thank you for raising that.
Now my telephone picked up, but like if I had my laptop did not.
Right. So it's clear there wasn't Wi-Fi available.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then I see you went off camera. Did you want to respond to that? Is that something that you've heard? No. Okay. Yeah, this is the first time I've heard that. So thank you for raising that, Susan.
Okay.
So Lori mentions, did you have something more to add? Okay. Lori mentioned sustainability is always an issue for libraries, especially in low-wealth communities, also turnover of staff, and building the capacity of administration to continue to support digital equity through hiring professional development. The cost of professional development is often more than small and rural libraries can afford. Thank you for sharing that. And so she asked, how is the Office of Digital Equity and Literacy planning to support continuing education for digital navigators in the long term? That's a really good question, Lori. And we are working on some funding for digital navigators as pilots within libraries. These funds, and I didn't do a full overview of like what this planning process was for, but the Digital Equity Plan will be due in October, and once it is turned into the federal government, we will have the ability to pull down significant funding to implement the plan. So all of these outreach efforts are to kind of set the priorities within the plan, but then the plan's not meant to sit on an internet shelf somewhere, a website shelf. It's actually meant to be implemented with real federal funding. So we expect to receive $25 to $30 million of federal funds. And, you know, we don't know how those funds will be spent, but imagine that upskilling people to be able to best serve communities through digital navigation could be one of those. And so that's definitely something we want to work with the libraries on. All right. And and with that, how to use the device in addition to all the scams and frauds that take place. Yes, using a device, including, I think this was in response to kind of the sustainability, is something significant that we're focused on. So it's not just how do we get a device into people's hands, but it's how do we ensure that they have all the wraparound services that they need in order to use that device, including cybersecurity and privacy, and then the sustainability piece. I am the ED and so this is Elizabeth at an adult day center. I am trying to provide support to seniors. We have devices and Wi-Fi. Okay, well that's great. So I think this might have been in response to Susan asking about facilities in nursing facilities and Wi-Fi. So that's good. That's good to hear. Lori says +1 for skilled nursing and facilities. Amalia says it's too costly to have all the people connect without proper and have proper bandwidth. And then Todd says we need state funding to set up and teach youth to repair or upgrade devices. This would be discounted to the level that would pay youth to work. This could be an extension of some other folks. And actually, there is a program through the North Carolina Business Education Committee, NCBCE. They have something called Tech Teams that they've piloted in, I believe, middle and high schools, mostly in Eastern North Carolina. But this came out of the pandemic. It was, they realized they didn't have enough IT staff to support all the laptops that were going out. And so they've trained students and pay the students to be able to provide tech support to students and parents and teachers and now kind of the broader community. So Todd, that is something that's happening that the state is funding now and to build what we see as a successful program.
What's the name of that program? Sorry for interrupting. What's the name of that program again?
No apologies for interrupting. It's called Tech Teams, and it looks like Annette has put that in the chat as well.
Awesome,
and I see we have some raised hands. I'm not seeing who they are. Todd, is that your hand was already raised, or did you raise your hand again?
No, no. I'm not raised, I don't think.
Okay. Great. All right, I'm trying to catch up on all of these. I'm a little behind on where we are in terms of chat. This is fantastic. So I appreciate all of you being so engaged in the chat. All right, I think that I'm set up. Amalia says, and there are a lot of congregate living centers in North Carolina. So again, lots of engagement in the chat. Susan pointed out that rural areas do not always have access to the internet, except for kind of the main anchor institutions, such as libraries and technical colleges. So you're absolutely right, Susan. And what I will say is between our state ARPA dollars, so our American Rescue Plan Act dollars, and then the broadband funds that'll come through the broadband planning, that's kind of the complementary planning process that's happening with digital equity. We expect to be able to completely ensure that all unserved and underserved areas in North Carolina have internet access. And so that it's something that we will have the funding. We'll have about $2 billion to ensure that we are completing that infrastructure build out. And we understand it is a major challenge. Thank you, Lori, for the +1 on this digital equity plan not just being on kind of a virtual shelf. Todd talks about how the state should fund AI proofs of concepts for use by community trained on government and nonprofit resources. Susan talks about our inmates are given a tablet to use to watch movies and messages with loved ones and important for their mental health. You'd like this to be seen in senior facilities as well. Wonderful. Are there any other, so I'm going to stop for a moment of going through all these and I'll get back to those questions in the chat. I just wanted to lift, are there any other kind of comments on the outreach for these specific, for particularly the digital equity survey? Is there anything that would be most helpful for you to get the word out? I see Shalandra has her hand up, and then it looks like Greg Clinton also has his hand up. So Shalandra.
Yes, in regards to the paper survey, just really lifting up the email for that. Often community-based organizations do not have the capacity to print or don't have the budget. So just being mindful of that. But having the opportunity for them to access it, or even a number where they could contact someone if they don't have that email, I think will be important. We'll share it with our coalition members, but just keeping that at the top of mind frame. Many of the areas that they will initiate or want to encourage individuals to do the survey will not have great access to the internet. So that's all.
That's a great point. So ensuring that we have that email and possibly a phone number kind of at the top, in various places, so people can make sure that they see it to be able to print and get the support that they need. Thanks for sharing that. Greg.
Hello, everybody. There are a couple of things I was concerned with. One is getting the word out, and I wonder if we should employ more radio and other PSA services to get the word out to make sure that people understand what's going on. The second thing I'm concerned about is we talk about high-speed internet, but we don't have a guideline of saying what that looks like in North Carolina. What are those speeds? What are we anticipating those speeds to be within North Carolina? As well as when we talk about the asset inventory, I like to see where we have like public computing spaces, so people will know what those public computing spaces are, so can they access to. I know a lot of libraries do have those spaces, but I think people in general across North Carolina may want to know where all the public computing spaces are.
Greg, those are really great points. And definitely the public computing spaces, it will be one of the kind of assets or resources that we're looking at. The guidance for the high speed, I believe, has been determined, at least for NTIA. I believe it's 120. And then it has to be symmetrical for any new build, so 100, 100. I am not the infrastructure gal, though, so pardon me if I misspoke on that, but we'll make sure that we get you the correct answer. But thank you for highlighting that. It looks like we have, and then the points about radio. People are giving thumbs up in the chat. I think that is a great idea, and we are bringing on a PR firm to support some of our affordable connectivity program efforts, and I think this could be a part of that as well. Rosa asked about surveys per area. Aaron, I believe that we will have a dashboard showing results of the survey, and I believe it shows maps because we asked for zip code. Could you expand on that?
Yes, so the dashboard hasn't been built yet, but yes, we will have a dashboard where you can go and see the results on a map as well as in other ways. So we can see pretty clearly if we're missing specific areas of the state where we need to target our efforts a little more.
Great. So definitely, and that's something that we've used for our broadband survey as well, as seeing where, what outreach efforts are working by geographic location. I see something in here from both Bernie and Todd asking about kind of template checklist process for grants. that are upcoming. This is something that we've gotten a lot of feedback on, is better understanding what grants are coming up. So I believe that that's something that we are working on, both for broadband as for digital equity. So we make sure that people understand what funding is available and specifically what it's for and how it can help to fill in gaps. Brittany also asked, is there funding for printing and mailing for outreach? Not specifically to organizations, but on our end there is. So if you need something printed and mailed to you with self-addressed envelopes, we can make sure that we get that to you. Part of it is like, it's very hard for us through procurement to pay outside organizations. And so that's kind of how we have to do it. But if you have a need, please reach out to us and we can figure out a way to get it printed. I'm looking at some chatter in the chat about the PR firm. Are there other questions specifically about outreach and how we can best support you with outreach for these surveys? Lori says Spanish language and other expat languages would be extremely helpful, maybe even on religious stations. Oh, that's a good call on religious stations. We definitely are engaging congregations and churches. And yes, the reasons why we chose the 6 languages we did is that they were the top 6 languages in North Carolina where people don't speak English well. And so we've been working with the North Carolina Office on Public Engagement to identify those languages and ensure that those materials are in those languages. So great question. Are there any other additional materials that we could provide for any of you as we think about making this toolkit stronger? So we've heard kind of ensure that we're putting the how you can get help right at the top. Like, do you need these printed? Make sure that people have that. We've heard about making sure that, the survey itself is in appropriate languages and is not just some sort of audio generated translation, but is translated by a human being. So Lori suggests that the toolkit have templates and customization by organization and by audience. We don't necessarily have it set up that way. And I think we'd really want to lean on all of you for, what would be most helpful for you for that. That's why we are including a bookmark, because the library said that would be, the state library said that could be helpful. So if there are very specific things for your target audience, let us know and we can try to include that. I know David says, I know for the Center for Digital Equity team in Mecklenburg, knowing if people have engaged with the Digital Navigator team would be helpful. I don't know if others would also find this helpful. I think that's interesting, David. I think the challenge is there's not like the same kind of Digital Navigator team as there is in Mecklenburg. We're working on something like that for the state level, but there's not the same kind of knowledge. Sierra says, what about a script for media releases if an organization speaks on a radio station? I know our library speaks on a radio station several times a month. Oh, that's great. So kind of some talking points. So we were kind of putting together some talking points anyway, but hadn't been thinking about it specifically if someone is asked to speak. So that's a great suggestion. Thank you for that. Anything else this group can think of? Cindy from Crandon says, I like the comment of, did you know more examples? So thinking about different triggers based on where different people, who different people are, might help people pay attention. That's great. Bernie asks, are you doing a mass mailing based on example, the tax or employment database? Erin, could you speak to that a little bit about how we're doing mailings?
So to start with, we were really relying on our partner organizations, but that's a really interesting idea. I personally haven't done that before, but I would love to look into any options that would help get this out to the folks we need it to.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I think, we talked about already a couple times in here, like, relying on people to have the internet in order to find out about the internet is kind of a broken system.
Yeah.
So one thing that when I went to the county and I said, do you have like a database of all the people, all the residents' addresses? They were like, I don't know if we have it in any form we can use, and it would cost a lot of money, and we don't have the resources. And so, putting it back to us to try to get in touch with all our residents from, a nonprofit or a county basis. I don't know if we can do that, but maybe the state has the resources to reach, 80, 85, 90% of the people from like, for example, employment or Department of Revenue database.
It's a great question, Bernie. Thanks for raising it. We'll definitely look into that. We got some questions about engaging Department of Ed. They're definitely on our radar. We're engaging them, say, with the Affordable Connectivity Program. So that information about that program is going out when parents are notified that they can qualify for free and reduced lunch. So I think something like this could certainly support. Todd suggests a pamphlet for doctors' offices. So I think some of those flyers, maybe we could put it into a pamphlet form. And Crystal, who is the mastermind behind all of this communications toolkit, and all of your suggestions will ultimately flow through her in some way or the other, says, yes, we can include a script and a press release customized by your local area and population. Okay, let's see, what other questions do we have? So, again, suggestions for different apps, and we definitely can work with major healthcare organizations. Ooh, a lot more questions coming in. Jackie asked, have we met with all the state agencies? We've been meeting with state agencies just to let them know about planning. And so for some state agencies, Jackie, they've heard about the survey, but not all of them. And so it's just a good reminder to ensure that all state agencies know as well. Again, lots of ideas about sending them to specific centers, such as adult daycares, senior apartments, assisted living. And then Shalandra says during census, they used water bills and tax bills to engage with some rural communities. That's great. Wonderful. Are there any other thoughts? We have 4 minutes left. Are there any thoughts or ways that we can best support you all to get the word out about this? And so appreciate the ideas and the feedback for how we can improve this toolkit and our work in general. So in terms of next steps, we'll work on getting this toolkit finalized, and I'm going to put finalized in quotes because we'll get it to a point that we think is really good, and make sure that it is available online and that you all know about it. And then based on feedback from you and talking to partners, we may make additions or update it as needed, but please expect to hear from us within the next week about a finalized toolkit. And we do hope that you are able to engage with us as we continue this regional listening tour across the state. I know that Annette put in the registration. We'll be sure to follow up with all of you and make sure that you have that registration links as well. And then we will continue to engage. We hope that this is not the only time we connect. We hope to bring you back in the future, and would just encourage you all to reach out to us if you have any specific questions or want to engage further. I'm going to put my email in the chat, and you can always contact me directly if you have questions about this or want more information. And we know you are all really busy people doing really important work around the state. So the fact that 50 of you decided to show up today to hear about outreach efforts that we're doing at the state is huge. So thank you all so much. We appreciate you engaging us in this work, and truly we couldn't do this without all of you engaging. We're a small team, and so we need to close the digital divide. We need to do this all together. So thank you, everyone.